Welcome to the Create the Life You Want podcast, where we break down the journey of people just like you going from dream to ownership in business acquisitions, franchises, and startups. I'm your host, Jeremy Ames. Today's episode is brought to you ad-free by Guidant Financial. Guidant is America's leading company helping aspiring entrepreneurs use retirement funds to buy or start businesses. If you're committed to buying or starting a business, you can find out more about your funding options by going to www.guidantfinancial.com. That's Guidant financial.com. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome, everyone, to the show. Today, I am joined by Michelle and Chris Murphy, and in case you hear any scratching in the background, that is probably a dog trying to get into their office as we speak, because what Michelle and Chris ended up doing was starting a dog boarding business. We're going to find a little bit about that today, but Michelle and Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
So, a dog boarding business, is it fair to say that you are pet people? That's probably my first question.
Yes.
Has this been a passion you guys have had for a long time? Because I heard you actually breed and show dogs as well. Did that happen? Was that happening before you even thought about starting a business around pets?
Yes, actually it was. I've had English Mastiffs for about 25 years.
Those are big dogs.
Yeah, very large. And that kind of got me interested in the breeding side of it after I dropped my Labrador off one day and saw an English Mastiff. I felt something on the back of my neck. There was a Mr. Ed door there, and someone was boarding an English Mastiff there, and I turned around and he was looking down at me. And that got me interested in the breed. Long story short, we got our first one a year or so later. And then everything just kind of fell into place to where this one kind of got more on board with it after a couple of dogs. And
Michelle, is that what was happening there? Okay.
Yeah.
And long story short, I ended up being on the board of a regional Mastiff club down in Florida, even though I'm in Kentucky. I'm the show chair for that club. We put on 3 dog shows every year in Tampa. And I never really thought of doing commercial boarding in daycare until a friend of mine actually sent me a listing that they were looking at kennels, and they saw one in my area, and they forwarded it to me to see if I was interested in it. And seemed like
Contemplating a business? Was this just one of your friends decided to send you something and it's like, hey, Chris, you seem really depressed at work. Maybe you should try something different.
Well, yeah, that's my wife and I have always thought about doing a business, but we've never expressed that to anyone. And the person that forwarded it to me had no idea that we would even entertain it. She just thought it was neat that it was within 30 minutes of my house. So she forwarded it to me.
So do you remember the first time you had the thought that went through your head, hey, maybe I might want to own a business someday?
Oh, yeah, that was probably on my 73rd hour in the same week working at Cracker Barrel. Okay,
we're going to need more words there because Cracker Barrel has so many other assumptions with it.
Yeah, before I even met her, I was working at Cracker Barrel, going to college, or community college, as a dishwasher. I ended up working my way up through Cracker Barrel to be a manager in the end, but of course ended up leaving there and working elsewhere later in life. But that's where Cracker Barrel came from.
Yeah, so you're working your 73rd hour in Cracker Barrel. How many years did you work at Cracker Barrel?
I think 7 or 8.
Okay. So you were probably the youngest person in that entire joint most of the time.
Yeah, I was at the time at least the youngest manager they ever hired, and I was also the reason that the first person to go through the program where they allowed you to be promoted from within.
Okay.
I was actually given the keys to a store before I was ever actually allowed to.
I guess they don't have enough managers going on there.
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
So let me ask you this. You guys are a couple, right, that own this business. So let's start first with who does what? How did you decide to go down this path? Did you both say, "Hey, we're going to quit whatever we were doing before and we're going to do this together," or did one of you start first? I know when we first started, Michelle was in the front of the camera and now she's in the back. So I don't know how you guys are doing the who's the lead singer thing, but
That's the way we run the business as well. It started out with the thought that I would run most of it and Michelle would stay in the background. And as we've gone through over the last 2.5 years or so, um, she likes to be in control a lot.
I got one of
So
those too. Love her dearly. Her name is Jill.
my responsibilities have backed up, and she's doing things like scheduling, and I don't think I've ever even done payroll.
No, I do all the payroll.
Which originally I was going to do all that, but that was the first thing she started to take, so that she could have something to do with it. And then I'm pretty much a silent partner now.
No, he handles the day-to-day operations. I would say, from the time that,
Is that what he means by silent partner?
yeah, sometimes I let him sometimes talk. But when we first started down the process, and he'll bring me an idea, and I'm like, there's no way. There's just absolutely no way we can do this. We've talked about lots of business opportunities over the years, and I've probably shot down every one of them. I mean, honest to goodness. And then this harebrained idea came up and said, "Hey, let's go look at this property." And I was like, "Okay." So we walk into our building that we own now, and he's like, "What do you think about owning this?" And I was like, "You have got to be crazy. Like, we have 27 English Mastiffs on our property now. Do I really want to have a commercial boarding business?" And so we started talking about it more, and it was really a passion around our daughter. She's in high school. She's focused on becoming a vet, and we're really passionate about our community and kids, and definitely our daughter. That's the number one reason why we do everything. And we thought, if we were able to find a way to purchase this building, take over this business, that this could potentially give our daughter a future as she goes into her vet practice and she does her education. She would maybe have a facility that one day, once she got her veterinary diploma, she could come back and open up her own practice. So that's what really drove us, was how could we invest for our daughter for the future and give her experience today, because jobs like these are really hard to come by for people who don't have a lot of experience. So it was a very quick process because we had to move very, very fast. And there was this whole Rob's process as Chris was looking to try to figure out how the heck do we invest in something like this. All of our assets were tied up in the stock market and we didn't have a lot of cash on hand to do it. And Chris went and found Guidon and said, "Hey, I think this is something that we might be able to do and start with the Rob's process." And so it was very quick. I think we saw the property in May and then closed June 30th. I mean, it was fast.
Yeah, it's one of those situations to where this is one thing I will say for people starting out. There's always a risk involved, but whenever you find some property that's too good to be true, do all your due diligence, but don't dally. It's okay to forego some inspections if it means that there's less scrutiny or less time given to the seller to realize they're selling you something too cheap.
Okay, so I have a couple questions about that because it sounds like you thought you were getting a smoking deal. It's not actually where I was expecting you to go. I was expecting you to go at first to do your due diligence. This is a really bad thing we found after we bought the business.
Oh,
So
no.
which is it, Chris? Did you get a smoking deal? You didn't want them to know that they were the prettiest girl in the school when you were taking them out to the dance, or what?
Pretty much. If you remember when my wife was talking about it before, we've talked many times, or I've talked many times about starting a business in the past.
Yeah.
But she's always seemed to find a reason that it wouldn't be a good idea. She's more conservative than I am. I'll roll the dice a little more and accept the consequences. But when that property came forward, it kind of checked all the boxes for her too, being that the initial investment was undervalued in our view.
Is that based on the value of the real estate or the value of the business or both? How did you look?
Well, the value of the business, in my opinion, is just 3 or 4 years of what the profits were. So the value of a business depends greatly on how well it was run. We basically bought the business for nothing because she didn't run it very well, and the property itself is a strip mall located, right across the street from the local Walmart. So even the reason she liked it was there was a little bit of a safety net there. Even if our business failed, we would still have some rental income coming in.
Okay, so it sounds like you were looking for a business for a long time. How many years are we talking?
Probably 5 or 6.
Seriously.
It's something that's been in the back of my head for years, but.
Okay, so you're at Cracker Barrel, you're getting burnt out, you start looking at various opportunities that are out there. Michelle tells you all the reasons all your ideas are dumb, and she might be right. Eventually you get to one, and it sounds like what really sells you on this, Michelle, is really two things. One, being able to own the underlying real estate, and two, it felt like something more connected to your family, both.
That's right.
Honestly, the fact that you have 27 Mastiffs means you were already running a dog boarding business.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of experience.
Yeah, no kidding. But the connection to your daughter, that makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you this. Walk me, have there been any time since you bought this business? Because this has happened to me a number of times, where you get to this point where you're thinking, why on earth did I do this? What's been the low point so far, 2 years in?
We've been very fortunate with that. Our lowest point has been more the typical strife whenever you have a family owning a business when we disagree on something. When we went into the business, we injected, I think about $70,000 of, oh crap, we forgot something money in the bank. So we had enough capital to cover any minor errors, which I think is important. You have to have enough expendable cash to cover any surprises that may come along, like a roof repair or your HVAC goes out, things that aren't typical expenses but come. I rambled myself off track there. You have to bring me back in.
Well, I think the thing I want to hear more about, it sounds like you're saying there haven't been really any major low points.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're fortunate enough in that the business that we purchased was able to be profitable, or at least not lose profit the first year. I went into it, like I said, with some capital expecting to lose money the first year. We were fortunate enough that we didn't. So our biggest headaches and nightmares were just the having to be there to control everything or to cover for people that don't show up. Your employees are what make or break a small business like ours. And obviously we bought a failing business, and it was mostly failing because of the employees. So we had some bad apples that we had to get out of there, and I have learned that the old saying, fruits of a feather flock together, is true. If you have some bad employees, it's hard to hire good employees. So what we decided to do was kind of something I did at Cracker Barrel when I would go to a store that needed improvement, was you hire groups of people at the same time that seem to have similar life goals and values, and you let them work together while they're there, and you isolate them from the bad people. And then once your number of good people outweigh the number of deviants, then the deviants start going away on their own because they don't fit in anymore. And then you're full of happy, vibrant people again, and work is fun.
So it's interesting, Chris. Most people that I talk to, when they tell me they're looking at a failing business, I say, not usually a good idea for your first company that you're going to walk into. It sounds like you felt comfortable enough with both what you were doing and the experience you had with dogs yourself, and even in management somewhat, right? When you're talking about hiring teams. Was it the real estate underlying it that really made you feel safe about it? Maybe I should ask this question of you, Michelle, because you look like the one that's more prudent when it comes to the financial decisions. So walk me through what you were thinking in your head when Chris brought this to you about the financial parts of it and what made sense and didn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, from the facility perspective, it's outside Fort Knox. So most people know Fort Knox, where the goat vault is. We're not even a half a mile from one of the gates. So it had a built-in client base, being military individuals. And so, part of it, we had to look at the facility and the location. And then we also looked at dog boarding competition. What was the market share? What was the brand value of what we were going to be buying? Was there enough businesses to sustain it if we could get the operations in place? And so Chris is right. We looked at the business and we said, yeah, we think there's a lot that we could do to improve the business. And then when we looked at the property and we started running the analysis of other properties we knew it was definitely undervalued. So I was like, at the end of the day, if we bought this, it went upside down in a year, the value for what we were paying was still more valuable than like leaving it. So
the real estate was there.
It was
the
there.
business you weren't really paying much for, so you're not going to lose the value. So that makes sense to me. Can you tell us a little bit, because I get this question a lot from people when they're talking about, they get the idea of going out and doing research, but in terms of where to go and how to do it, walk us through what you did to figure out what's going on in the dog boarding business and why does this location and this particular industry make sense?
Yeah, when you get into small businesses, it's hard to get specific numbers because they don't have to report to anybody, but you can get a general idea just by calling around, asking what their pricing is, asking what they do for daycare and boarding, that kind of thing. Just get a general feel of what's available in the area. And then we tried to price ourselves accordingly. We try not to be the cheapest, but we want to be amongst the least expensive in the area and then offer better service than anyone else.
Yeah, so it sounds like you both just picked up the phone and you started calling dog boarding business and saying,
where are you? AI has made things a little easier. I don't trust AI, but I did use that to do a market analysis for the area. I backed that up with personal phone calls and verification on my end. And I will say that AI is good, but don't always trust it.
Okay,
trust but verify.
Of something that was in that market analysis that the AI system gave you, that when you were doing your verification calls, you found out it's a little bit different?
Yeah, just the population size was way off for the area within a 20-mile radius of us, and also some of the pricing schemes because it pulled it off the internet. And one thing with small businesses in that genre especially, they can be very agile with their pricing, and it'll fluctuate.
They're giving you a better price than what you might be able to scrape online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the pet industry itself is about a $47 billion industry. So when you look at what people invest their time and resources in, pets are up there with their kids. And part of it is we were definitely looking at this business from a family perspective, obviously potentially a glad path for our daughter, but it was also our approach to our business with our employees. It is very much a very family orientated business and support. The way that we care for our clients' dogs, the way that we even care for our clients. We were joking the other day, I think we're on now the 11th wheel of our clients to take their dogs if anything was to happen with them, that we will take them.
Godparents for 11 people's dogs?
Yes.
In the event of a disaster, yes.
Yes.
And they know you already have 27.
Yes, they do.
They
Okay.
they expect me to do the best thing for the dog, not necessarily keep to myself.
Yeah.
I made that clear.
Okay, I gotta make a confession here. I am not a pet person. My daughter literally had to bribe me with a 40 slide deck PowerPoint presentation to say why we needed to get a cat and why she would save up the money and how to get it. It sounds overwhelming to me to think about 27 dogs. How on earth do you manage that? And how has that played into it? Seems like you guys jumping into the dog boarding business is just super easy because you're already managing 27 dogs. Like you already got some system for how to think about the chaos that that must lead to. So, how do you
Well,
manage that?
I guess that would get into the difference between how it was run before versus how it's ran now. Um, and I think the fact that we've already had a large kennel and I've traveled around the world and seen other people's facilities, inadvertently learning as I went. Um, a lot of places, boarding kennels like to frou-frou up the appearance, which is absolutely amazing. It's a good idea to do. But you always do it above the level that the dogs can chew because they'll tear everything up if it's not concrete or steel.
Well, in a
Uh,
Mastiff, that's what, like 7 feet? I mean, how high do those things go when they're standing up?
you pretty much just stop at 6 feet and then put a cover on top, and then
Okay.
you have to bolt them to the floor, or they'll just pick it up and crawl under.
So yeah.
Is there anything as you look back now, a couple years later, that you're like, we got this totally wrong early in the journey? So far, you've been painting, rainbows and butterflies about how it all came together, but tell us the real deal, Chris and Michelle. What
Well,
went
the
sideways you weren't
challenge
expecting?
for me is I had to learn a lot. I mean, I've been to business school. I have a full-time job in addition to this business. So this is my side gig, or one of my side gigs, I should say. But I had to like figure out what it meant to be a small business owner. And it is hard. This is not easy. It's not for the faint at heart. Your state laws and rules and taxes are very different. Workman's comp insurance, unemployment insurance, state taxes, federal taxes, all these various different things. And then we also have a 401k plan on top of this. Like there was just a lot of rules, regulations, wanting to stay to the letter of the law, do everything very correct because we don't want to be audited. We don't want to have any risk that we bring upon ourselves. But it was a learning curve. And then the state of Kentucky decided, this past year to redo their accounting systems and how small businesses actually file things. And so we're constantly having to learn how to navigate these larger processes without an infrastructure, like a lot of support. Our guidance payroll team is amazing. Our tax team is fantastic. And then bless our accountant's heart, every month she helps me kind of close my books, make sure that I have everything where I need, keeps me on the straight and narrow of my receipts and so forth. And that's a lot of comfort to me because this again is something I'm not very familiar. I worked for a very large company that has all this infrastructure. It's just us and our guidance team, and they make it possible for us to feel like we've got control of our financials, our reporting, our taxes, so we can actually focus on running our business.
Yeah,
Talk about that a little bit, Michelle. You're obviously a very smart person. You've gone to business school and you've worked in these large companies, right?
Mhm.
Talk about that transition in your head to becoming a small business owner. Like, what's the biggest thing that's changed for you and how you see the world?
Yeah, I don't call a department or a person who's responsible for payroll. It's me. It's, I'm like, yeah, or if we're getting ready to do taxes, monthly, I have to file state taxes. Like, I have to remember to do that. We close our books on the 15th. I have to file state taxes by the 20th. I have to put processes and procedures in place so that way we stay compliant on all those things. It's doable. And we were really lucky to find someone in the state of Kentucky who helps small businesses kind of walk us through this process for the taxes and so forth. But it is scary. I mean, I remember a couple of nights I was very frustrated, just trying to figure out we've got to set up this ROBS, we've got to transfer money, we have to have the corporate account. There were all these things that we had to do because we had a really short runway to close on the business. And then we had it, and Chris had to go to a dog show the day after, like the afternoon we were closing. He leaves, and it's 4th of July weekend, and I have this new business with all this new staff, and he's on a flight to go to a dog show. And I'm trying to change over merchant accounts and, transition the business. Those first couple of weeks, they weren't for the faint at heart. They were challenging, and you get through it. It's just challenging, I guess.
Yeah, so I would like to add something. You said that I was making it sound a little too sunshine and rainbows, which is probably true. But the reason for that is we were already experienced in the type of business we were owning. And everything that was new to us, or most of the things that were new to us, Guidant helped us figure out. The accountant she was talking about, that was a recommendation of someone from Guidant. Guidant, everything that we had a hard time understanding or finding on our own, there was someone there at Guidant that had an answer for us. So it put us very much at ease. We were nervous at first because you're kind of going in blind. You're paying somebody a few $1,000s and hoping that they are what they tell you they are. And Guidant's one of the few places I've ever done business with that exceeded my expectations, and let alone meeting them.
That makes my day to hear.
But it's just the truth.
It's the truth.
It is that you guys made it easy. Now, we did have our own headaches and hiccups to work through with a small business, but it's the things that people generally think of. The real roadblocks behind a business that most people don't know about is where Guidant helped us.
Yeah, so it sounds like Michelle kind of answered my question about the low point. It was right when you took over ownership, because
yes.
You're walking into this brand new business. It's a super busy period of time. And then Chris is like, I'm out. This business that I'm supposed to be running full time. And so you're trying to figure out all the back end stuff while also you've got all these deviants or whatever this group of people is that you think you got to move out over time. How long did it? Well, maybe do this. Can you paint a picture for us of where the business was performing when you took over it? And then help us understand the transformation that you've been able to execute within the business over the couple of years that you've owned it.
So I'll talk in census numbers of how many dogs we have in house, because we were actually talking about this over Memorial Day weekend. So when we took over our first day, it was July 1st, 4th of July, week of 4th of July. And we had about 38 dogs in house. And it was so busy.
Dogs?
Not our dogs. 38 client dogs. And again, there were all these processes that were what we deemed not efficient, not productive, and maybe not even as safe as they possibly could be. And it was a struggle. That whole week, you have staff that you're trying to get used to. You're watching their processes because you don't want to change things too fast. And it was a grind. I mean, they were hard days trying just to take care of these 34 dogs. Fast forward to this weekend, this past Memorial Day weekend, we had 40 dogs in house. We were half the staffing that we had when we first started. It built like any other day. It was easy peasy. So,
in 25 daycare.
In 25 daycare. So we had 40 dogs, 25 daycare for the entire week, and we were running 3 staff members.
Yeah, the prior year they had almost no daycare during the day as well. So.
And running 8 to 9 people a day. So, just processes, procedures, things that we did when we first took over. We looked at like the efficiency of potty and dogs. That's something very basic. But we went in and invested dollars to have dedicated potty runs so you could, basically potty in 7 or 8 dogs per cycle. And you might do 3 or 4 cycles to get through your 40 dogs. Things that you could decrease your staffing by, make things safer, make it more enjoyable for the staff and the animals, sanitary, those types of things. But those are all things that we had to sit back for the first month to 2 months and watch current processes. And then over time, slowly start changing processes, building out things that made just everyone's job a lot easier.
Michelle, I have done many of these interviews and I have never once talked about the potty efficiency ever. This is a new place to nerd out. in a pet related business. What I'm hearing is that what you've done in terms of growing the business has been less about the boarding. It's been about adding new services like the daycare part and really focusing on that. And then just making the business run so much more smoothly with less staff. So you're driving a little bit of extra revenue and a lot less cost than what was happening when you took over.
Yeah.
Well, we initially started driving a little bit more revenue, but as we started making the appearance on the outside nicer and going back to the employees again, vibrant, happy employees draw people in, and they give good experiences, and then they go tell people. We didn't change anything for the first 2 months there at all. We just watched and pretended as though we weren't going to change anything because we wanted to see exactly how it ran. Then we started making our changes. Then I realized these employees were not going to get on board. We hired new ones, put the systems in place. But now we started out, or we ended last year at 20% increase over the year before. And that was...
Both?
They had no profit before, so
Yeah,
all of our profit was good.
So like a billion%.
Yeah. Then that was based on the numbers before we had it. And then now that we're running up against our own numbers from last year, and we've gotten the new staff, and we've fixed the facade, put down new pavement, made it look like we're investing in the company, investing in their dogs. And now we're up 50% in revenue from our own numbers last year. So we're really, 70 or 80% up from what they were before.
Yeah.
Actually making money.
Yeah.
Is the goal at some point, Michelle, that you're going to join the business, or are you going to keep doing your full-time job and do some of the back office things to support the business? What's the plan there?
No, I'll keep my full-time job. I love what I do. I love all my jobs that I have.
How many jobs do you have, Michelle?
I don't know, a lot. Some that I get paid for, as we say, we have a temperament dog, and I joke and say we pay her in kibble. So maybe Chris pays me in Bob's Mints. That's what I typically eat whenever I go into the office. I get Bob's Mints, so I get paid in mints today.
She is an assistant vice president for a Fortune 50 company as well, on top of all of this. So she wears many hats. She just doesn't like to say that.
Yeah. So Chris, did you leave Cracker Barrel to jump to this opportunity?
No, believe it or not, when I left Cracker Barrel, I went to a factory because I wanted a straight 9 to 5. I was tired of the working 70, 80 hours a week and still only getting paid for 40. So I went to some place to work 40 hours a week. It's a local glass manufacturer here that makes windshields for cars. And just started on the floor, and as I've done everywhere else I've ever worked, I ended up going from a floor worker to production specialist inside the office again, and then I'm back on salary, so now I'm working 70 hours a week again. Fortunately, I was able to retire a little bit early from that and get out of that. There was no air conditioning in there outside of the office, which is why I wanted to get in the office. But when I got in the office, I'm working twice the hours again. So.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm curious to understand about your story, because it sounds like you had multiple moments in your journey where there were times where you thought, I got to do something different. But you looked at a bunch of different things. What kept you going and kept you looking at other opportunities until this one finally came across the transom?
Let's be honest with you. I've really worked in 3 industries over the years. Restaurant, gas stations, and then factories. And I've always been successful. I've always went in at the bottom floor and ended up in the management level of that. And I found that it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you're always making or providing something, and you're managing people. And if you can manage your people, you can get your people to trust in you, and you can give them opportunities as you get yours. There's a lot of loyalty there, and there's a lot of trust. So even when there's a mistake made, it's never frowned upon like it is if you don't know the intent of the person. And that, just like in life, relationships rely on trust. And that doesn't matter if it's your wife or your employee.
The beauty of that way you describe that, Chris, is that in every new role you jumped into, you started at the bottom and worked your way up. And that almost is the trajectory that someone takes in buying a business.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
walk in and you're doing all the things, trying to figure them out. And you're the one fixing the toilet when it's done. You're the one figuring out the potty cycle, whatever the thing is that needs to be resolved. And then over time, you've got to sort of level up and get yourself out of the weeds and get other people to step in and replace you. So it sounds like you've had a lot of experience with building and growing teams. Is there anything in particular that has changed for you as you thought about doing that with your own business versus what you had done in some of these other companies?
There's not a lot different, but there's a different perspective and a different level of responsibility, I think. We try to treat everyone as well as we can, sometimes to a fault. And those doing too much hurts you even more than not doing enough for people sometimes. I wholly believe that, good creates good, and if you treat people well, then good things will come to you. But I have found that if you give too much, you don't make sure that they earned what was given to them initially, they will not produce for you anymore if you're giving things too fast.
I love it when people give me answers like this because it makes me say, okay, that's great theory. Now tell us the actual story of what happened that got you to the point where you believe and know that that is true.
Well, for example, in our area, the pay for assistance and kennel help and things like that is probably around $12 an hour typically. We're in central Kentucky. Everything's cheap here. Our gas is $2.50 a gallon right now.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Cost of living here is cheap, so labor here is also relatively affordable. But I went in and I paid 25% more than what everyone around me was paying. Again, because I wanted to hire people in bulk. I wanted to hire 4 or 5 together that could work together. And I had to make it worth their while, so to speak. And that paid off well for us. We got good people, and we were able to be more discerning in our interviews. I bet we have probably interviewed 600 people to find 6.
Yeah.
6 good ones. We could have filled that hole quicker, and that's something I would recommend people don't do as a small business. Like, staff it to where you don't have to be there, but be prepared to be, so you're not timid. You don't make the wrong decision on your employees. I got sidetracked again with that. Bring me back around.
It brings up an interesting question because when you talk about those employees and hire them in bulk, in my experience, most people, once they buy or start a business, they lose their mind when it comes to cash flow. They're so stressed about what's happening that even investing in the very things that are going to help their business be successful is hard. So the idea that you would go out and hire multiple people beyond what you needed to just serve the business almost seems counterintuitive. So tell us a little bit about that logic, and maybe it's more of a question for you, Michelle. How did you get your head around that, yes, this makes sense financially to overhire here for a period of time to make sure that we can make this switch right?
Well, we actually just did this in February. So we needed 1 head count. And as we started interviewing, we actually found 2 really amazing people. And, and it's February. We're still in school season. We're not in vacation season. Spring break hasn't even hit.
It's very slow for us.
Very, very slow. And, daycare was maybe around 8 or 10 dogs. I mean, we have to have 8 dogs on the premise to pay for every FTE that we have in the building at the time is kind of our ratio.
I love that you know all the ratios, by the way.
So, and we may only have like 6 or 7 boarding dogs at that time in February. And we said, is it worth going ahead and investing in these two, what we feel like are really strong rock stars that's going to fit in our culture, be able to help us out and hire them on, probably 2 months premature than not to hire them. So we took that leap of faith. And then once we got our team on there, we introduced them. The business just came. I don't know. I think grace of God decided they don't want to stress me out too much over the early spring season. But daycare built from 8 dogs to 24, just pretty much overnight. Boarding started building out too with spring break in March, Easter in April, graduations and so forth here now in May. And so, it's not uncommon for us to have 40 dogs in house, during the normal day. And we're not even in our busy season yet. We start to get into busy season this next week.
She's learned to trust me a little bit more with that. With her being an assistant vice president for a large company, she is a very talented individual, very technical. But when it comes to the forest for the trees kind of thing, stepping back from it, she's learned to trust me with business decisions on that. Just like I said with the employees, hire them now, they'll bring the business because energetic, happy people, people like seeing energetic, happy people. So when they see their dog come in and they're having fun with the dog, they go tell people. That's how your business increases. Too. She's the best marketer in the world. That's a fact.
So, yeah.
You guys sound like a fantastic team. Chris, I'm sort of translating you as the sort of intuitive people manager type profile, and the fact that Michelle knows every single ratio in a business. First of all, I am super impressed because one of the biggest gaps that I see with small business owners is that they don't know the numbers in their business. And the fact that you know exactly how many dogs you need in daycare to pay for every FTE, it's no wonder that you got profitable. And I would just ask, is that because you went to business school and that's just how your brain works? Or was there some approach you took when you bought the business where you said, hey, I'm going to make sure and focus on these things?
I wanted to make sure we didn't lose money. So the first thing I did was dive into all the analytics and the platforms and, made sure that our pricing structure was correct. Was the team actually entering dogs correctly? The first thing, we had like the 34 dogs that I mentioned the first weekend when I was there. We only charged people for 15. I was like, well, how did that happen? It's because the team wasn't entering in the number of dogs correctly. And so that was the first way to bring the revenue up, was just charge people for what we're doing. It was a little bit of a low bar. But yeah, I mean, I watch the cash flow daily. I'm in my QuickBooks account. I want to see what the projections are. I'm tracking our expenses. But then I'm also, as we just paved our front yard, I'm like, well, that's $20,000 that we're going to walk on top of. It's going to be a really nice, paving job. But I worked this weekend when it was being done over Memorial Day weekend. And it was amazing to watch our clients walk in and go, we love the parking lot. I mean, we had trucks out there. They were blacktopping everything. It was a mess. But all of our clients were super excited that they didn't have potholes that they were having to drive around, that it was going to make the building look so good. And so now Chris and I are like, okay, well, how are we going to deal with this increased demand we're going to have? Because we just have the parking lot done. They're getting ready to update the facade. We've done some different things with marketing and shooting a commercial. We're going into our busy season. So now we're trying to figure out, well, what else can we do inside of our building to build more capacity? And how, another daycare area. We built a daycare area over a weekend just to give another room because we were running out of room. And so with our building being so large and the way that it's structured, we're trying to figure out how we can build capacity internally. And then now we're starting to talk about a second location as well.
I'm gonna interject here real quick and answer your question a little more shortly than she did. No, she did not go to business school. She advanced where she was with a communications degree, and she's now probably one of, if not the best marketers in the country. And that helps because a lot of people don't realize marketing. They think of advertising. Yeah. with marketing, you have to be involved with the product from its conception to its production to its execution. So she had to learn everything about a business.
It sounds like even the parking lot matters when you got customers coming in.
Yeah, the logo development, that was a team effort as we developed the logo together, the colors, the way that, it's always a team, everything that we do. We just, sometimes disagreement, but we always get to a good place at the end.
By team, she means I ask for it, she says yes or no.
Sounds like some marriages I know.
No,
Let
she's
me
very
ask this
good.
question because I'm curious. How has business ownership changed either each of you individually or how you operate as a couple or even how you talk with your daughter? Like, help me understand how it's changed the dynamics of any of that.
It's interesting having a daughter who's also your employee. So we have kind of these roles of mom and dad at work, and then Leah, our daughter, as an employee. And I think it's also a dynamic for her because she wants to be seen as a coworker, not as the boss's daughter. And so this has been an interesting dynamic. But it has afforded us an opportunity to talk. We talk about the finances with her. She's very aware of, when we buy something or we don't use a resource effectively inside the building, then when they need something else, we may not have the money to cover that. And so speaking to her about that, what she does really like is when we buy lunch, a lot of times employees are somewhat food insecure. I mean, it's a real situation. Transportation is a challenge. And so, we always make sure that there's always food inside the building. If none of our employees will ever go hungry. And we purposely stock our refrigerators, and tell them if they do not have food, they can come by the office, pick up food. But they see those resources and we're investing wisely, and then we're investing in our people. And that goes back to the culture that Chris was talking about. When you truly do try to take care of your people, they're going to help you take care of your business. And she's getting to see that firsthand. She does want us to come work on Saturdays and Sundays with her because we typically buy lunch for whoever is working. But she's learning some pretty valuable lessons that you won't learn, cracking open a college book or taking a college course, because she's seeing it firsthand. And that was part of our desire.
I would like to clarify one thing. We do have food there 24/7. We have a freezer. We have a place to cook if you want to cook. We always have ready-to-eat meals there. But that's not for our full-time employees. They're welcome to them. But we always have it there because we have some girls that only work because they're in school or whatever, 8 or 10 hours a week. We don't want to think we're not paying people enough to live.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was assuming that. I do want to ask, though, because I want to be sensitive to your time here. I know you guys are on the East Coast and it's getting late. If someone's listening and thinking about becoming an owner, what do you think they should do next?
You're going to have to take some risk. And if you don't know what the risks are, you need someone that does. And that's where Guidant really helped us. I can run a business. She can run a business. We can do that as well as anyone. That's not bragging. That's just reality. We've always excelled in whatever we've done with running our part of a business for someone else. But whenever it is your business and you're doing everything behind the scenes that you don't typically see as a manager or an employee, that's overwhelming. And with the resources that you have, that's the best money we've spent every year with our business, because we don't have to worry about where do we go for answers. You don't have to have all the answers as long as you know where to find them. And Guidance always helped us with that. Even if it was something outside of their privy, so to speak, the employees you had would send us in the right direction to find what we needed.
The other thing I would say is have a passion. I think it's just good advice no matter what career you choose. A job is a job unless it's your passion. And so if you can learn any type of business, but if you're truly passionate and you get up every day or you really are connected, there's a purpose of why you're wanting to invest in your business. That gets you through the hard parts. That's that, and investing in other people and watching other people like see your vision and see it come to life is pretty special. We all have those special moments, but having the passion, I think, is maybe one of the most important parts.
You'll have those 60 or 80-hour weeks when you're a new company, when you're trying to make sure everything's right. But it's a lot easier, like she said, if you're passionate for what you're doing and you're enjoying it. That's another reason it's important to have people you enjoy being around. You don't want to be there on your, working 60, 70 hours and tired and look up and see somebody that's cranky and doesn't know how to smile.
That it resonates with me. And personally, I'm also someone who grew up without a lot of money. In fact, I still have this irrational thing that if we ever go to a movie, I have to pay for snacks inside the theater that are incredibly expensive relative to what you get, because I have these scars from when I was a kid. At the sound of a soda can popping in a theater, I just wanted to hide, because my mom would always want to stop at the convenience store before we went there. And I think it drives a lot of us who maybe didn't have all that security when we were younger to really lean into something where we feel like we have a little more control. And once you feel a little bit more of that control and security and confidence that comes from your ability to put yourself into something and then see that you can go out and create more and more for yourself, it almost becomes an addiction of itself to go after that.
We talk often that if, you just never know what the job market, companies today, just where the economic future is. And we've had honest conversations over the last 2 years. Like, if something was to happen and I would lose my job, would we be okay? That question comes up, and we're like, yeah, we would, because we would just be our new employees. We would be in the kennel all the time working. And we've even talked about, wow, if we could have done something like this when we were in our 20s or early 30s, what a difference it would have made to our life as well. Like, we waited later. But if I would have said yes many times before and we had our business a lot earlier, would we be on a different path? But we could have seen, I guess we're just saying, we can look back and say, maybe we should have done this in our 20s, and him and I could have ran the facility nonstop, no problem, with just the two of us, and would have made a lot of money too.
Yeah, we could have very easily in our 20s, when we had more energy and our bodies hadn't broken down so much, we could have very easily been multi-millionaires by now, but before we were 30, if we'd done that.
That may very well have been true. And I will also tell you, as someone who did start his first business in his 20s, I got really lucky that I was able to make all the mistakes I needed to make to learn things. So don't take for granted all the experience that you've gained and the jobs you have that have set you up for the success that you're talking about right now. I mean, you're talking about these skills you've learned in learning how to hire people and develop people and put them in your business. You're talking about these skills you've learned about how to manage finances and how to think about ratios. There's a reason your business is succeeding. And it's because you've brought this collective experience to something that you're also passionate about in a way where you're going out there and delivering something way better in your community than was existing before. So it's a beautiful thing to see. I hope you both are feeling excited about it. I want to hear about the second location. Is this happening? Is this in the works? Is she going to say yes, Chris? What's the deal?
We have 6 acres of probably the most prime real estate in Elizabethtown, Kentucky right now. Elizabethtown, I don't know if you know, but it's been the fastest growing city in the country for years. They're just putting in a new blue oval plant Ford that just kind of doubled on it nearby in Glendale, 8 or 10 miles away. That's whenever I left AGC, that's kind of something that I did, was start investing into real estate. Since my wife's a good sugar mama, I didn't have to bring an income in as long as I was providing value. So I started looking at real estate, and I focused on commercial areas that were up and coming or soon to be up and coming. Go down to the planning and zoning and look at the future use map and see what the future is for that. I was looking more for a long-term investment 6 or 7 years ago than I was an immediate investment. And that was an area that was formerly residential, recently rezoned to commercial. Now we're in between a Lowe's, a Walmart, and a Target on this side, and a Publix and a Kroger on the other side. And the only place it can grow is towards us. So we've got that 6 acres there, and that my original plan was to put a boarding facility there. But I think what we're going to end up doing is similar to what we've got in Radcliffe. We're probably going to do a dedicated type of strip mall, where we're probably going to put a doggy daycare and boarding here, a groomer here, a pet store here, and then my daughter's vet office on the other end. So everything, if you need anything to do with your pets, that's where you go.
Seen that somewhere else before, or that just something that occurred to you about all the pieces that you want to see come together?
Just something I've thought about, trying to put them all together. That's one thing that I've learned from my wife, is to don't accept the norm, understand why it's there, and see if that's practical. But you don't always have to accept it. You can step outside that box a little bit, and as long as you use a little bit of a safety net, that's how things improve drastically.
All right. Well, thanks so much. We wish you continued luck, and I'd love to hear from you when you open your second location. Thanks for listening to the Create the Life You Want podcast. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to future episodes by clicking the subscribe button, where. If you're an aspiring business owner, you may also want to subscribe to the Create the Life You Want newsletter for more inspiration and tips delivered to your inbox every week. You can find the link to that in the show notes, as well as on my personal website, jeremyames.com. If you've already decided you want to start or buy a business, consider exploring your financing options by heading to our sponsor's website at www.guidantfinancial.com. That's GUIDANT financial.com. See you in the next episode.